Hi, and welcome to Logik Talks with Logik.io, where our VP of Marketing Blake Grubbs and our expert guests discuss how Logik.io augments CPQ, enables guided selling, and supports elevated B2B e-commerce experiences. Today, we're chatting with John Lehrkind, Director of Salesforce Practice and a Solutions Engineer with our partner Pierce Washington, for our final installment of a 3-part discussion and demo of how Logik can support streamlining provisioning bill of materials, or BOM. Enjoy.
We are back for part 3 of our Logik Talks with Pierce Washington. We're here with John Lehrkind, Director of Solutions Engineering for the Salesforce Practice over there. In part 2, John, we talked a lot about kind of blurring the lines between the back office and the front office and streamlining how data is incorporated to enhance the selling experience and enhance the customer experience by doing so. We're going to continue off of that trend here for part 3, where we're really going to focus on the importance of being able to separate and partition information in a sales BOM from a manufacturing BOM or a provisioning BOM as well. And the importance of making sure you have streamlined bill of materials data that you're able to leverage in the right way at the right time with customers. We see this being a challenge for a lot of companies, but a desire for them in order to have a more connected enterprise, like we talked about in part 2 as well. So to start off, John, my question for you is just, why is it so important to be able to separate these a sales BOM from a manufacturing BOM or a provisioning BOM from your perspective and from your experience?
Yeah, it's a great question, Blake. And really, so far, we've talked a lot about how hard of a job is of the sales rep, but let's now move a little bit downstream and talk about the provisioning teams, the engineering teams, the planning and forecasting teams that now have to deliver and actually execute on giving that and delivering that product to that customer. And so often with companies, who are changing pricing and packaging, or maybe even going through, a verticalization of new market solutions, they're not necessarily new products, but instead creating new ways of selling the same or even similar products. And so this really drives the need for, I guess, a translation between what was sold and what needs to be delivered. And so this is really the fundamental difference between, what is a sales bill of material and what is a manufacturing or a provisioning bill of material. And so with many companies that we work with here at Pierce Washington, we often see order management teams or provisioning teams working through, a post-sale motion that really includes manual translations of what was sold to what needs to be delivered. And this process is very tedious, it's very time-consuming, and also very, error-prone. So it's therefore really extremely important that sales still has the correct information that they need to be able to quote the process and get a technically and commercially valid quote forecasted and delivered to the customer in that PDF. And it's also extremely important that based on what was sold, the provisioning, the engineering, or the planning teams understand what manufacturing products or materials are required to produce that item that was just sold. And so, overall, this product level detail is extremely important, both on the sales side to get accurate forecasting and accurate quoting and accurate transparency to the customer, but also on the provisioning side to really understand what materials are needed for that widget, or what are all the specific parts that are going to make up the overall sales item. So, now to actually deliver on that correct widget on time, right, to the customer, that's one thing. But when a part now breaks down, or maybe, after you've delivered that product to that customer, there's an ongoing life cycle with interacting with that customer. And so when a part breaks or a service maintenance is required or a damaged item is returned, companies now have that product level detail down to the parts or even down to the manufacturing items to really drive those RMA processes or maintenance repairs or field technicians. And it's that level of detail between the sales and the provisioning or manufacturing BOM that brings these kind of experiences and the right level of data across your entire organization.
Yeah, I think that's a great description of it there, John. And just to kind of double click on that as well, you mentioned this whole concept of really translating, right, from one to the other. What challenges do you see in particular that these manufacturing companies are facing when it comes to that translation, and what are they doing currently to address that? I know you mentioned it's very manual today, right? So what are the things that they're currently doing to quote unquote solve that challenge?
Yes, it's a very manual process, and a lot of times, it's again back to our Excel spreadsheets. So typically around that order management function, we're seeing, taking an ATM and breaking it down now into, a cash dispenser, a cash receiver, all the parts and materials that are going to need to go into that ATM. Having that kind of translation between, again, what the sales sold and what the manufacturers or provisioners need is really, again, a huge list of that bill of materials against each sales item. And so, mapping that out or making sure the correct parts are selected, again, is a manual process that's really done after the validation of selling that product. And so it's at this point where we can start to introduce a lot of human error or one wrong keystroke. And a lot of this process starts to break down, where we now start to deliver the wrong product to the customer, and we start to have a lot of issues that go back and forth and really increase those operational inefficiencies.
Makes sense. So why don't we go ahead and jump into the demo that you all at Pierce Washington built out. We'll jump into that again, and you can kind of show how Logik helps facilitate this in a little bit or a lot of bit less manual way and a bit more streamlined for manufacturers.
So here we are back in the Logik configurator for the cash recycler ATM. And what we can see here is on the right, we're keeping track of not only the sales bill of material, but all of the individual items that are the manufacturing items that roll up into each individual sales item anywhere in that bill of materials. So whether that's at the top level or even nested within many layers within our parent-child hierarchy, we can start to surface the right manufacturing item that's really driving that sales product. And so as I save this here, we can start to see this again in the Logik configurator to really expose and start to configure those products accordingly. We can also start to see how Salesforce CPQ really starts to filter out those manufacturing items and provide just the sales items for my pricing experience around this ATM. So I can start to now work through just the price sales materials and really focus on what I need as a sales rep to get down to the right products and the right pricing without having to really necessarily worry about all the manufacturing items at this point. But of course, as we go through this experience, we're not only going to see that we're capturing the sales items, but also those manufacturing items behind the scenes, so we can pass that down to our provisioning and manufacturing and order management teams for proper execution on the product delivery. So one key note to actually call out here is, of course, we can see this at any point in our product lifecycle, whether we're in the Logik configurator or we're working through quoting or ordering or even seeing what our customer has already purchased. At any given point, we can launch into our quote lines or our order products or our opportunity products or our assets and really start to see that full hierarchy of what was actually a sales item versus a manufacturing item. And this is the level of information that's going to drive our provisioning process and even our support and service process downstream when we start to understand what exact parts and products were really used in our customer's product here when we delivered that to them.
Awesome. Thanks for running through that, John. I think that's a really powerful example here of how Logik works to help separate these sales items from manufacturing or provisioning items within Salesforce CPQ. But as you alluded to, that transitions nicely into our part 4 of this series, where we'll really talk about how you can extend the use of this data into applications like Service Cloud and other downstream applications, where you can really create this connected downstream experience within your business. So